Welcome to Ask Questions, where we answer questions that your heart desires answers to. And then, today we are talking about something that many of us are guilty of, many people are guilty of, but, we don't like to talk about, we don't like to look into it. Why? Because it seems like, oh, this aspect is not necessary, this aspect is not Christianity, is not important for a believer life. But then today, we're talking about its importance for a believer life. In fact, this can barely be a message topic in church because, it looks like it's not really that necessary. It's not one of those things. It's not one of our core values. It's not one of those important things that, we have to look into often and often, but then we are talking about it today. Yes, so where are you listening to me from right now? If you're listening to me in your room, look around your room. How is it looking right now? Is it looking neat? Is it looking arranged? Is it looking dirty? Is it looking very dirty? Do you have some things that should not be there? And then if you're outside listening to me, then think back to the room that you've left and then you are going to go back to at night or later in the day. How does the room look? Is it looking like very neat? Is it looking like dirty? How does it look? Most times we tend to separate different segments of our life. We tend to separate our physical life to our spiritual life to our financial life, to different aspects of our life. And then, what we think and then what we actually think matters to God really. Like the only thing we want God to take preeminence on, the only thing that looks like, oh, it should matter to God is our spiritual life. Is if I'm praying, is if I'm that. And then we've heard it over and over again that every aspect of our life relies on God. But even still, upon hearing it over and over again, there are still some things that looks like if you are bringing it to God, you are just wasting your time. For example, you want to tie your shoelace, you're asking God, can I tie it? Is that necessary? It looks like, oh, it's not necessary. And then, we have different examples of things, you want to do different things. And then it looks like maybe it is not really necessary to bring it to God. Today, what we are learning about is how does neatness, how does dirtiness affect your God's-given purpose? How does dirtiness ruin your God's-given purpose? How does it affect it? So, yes, that's what we are going to talk about today. And then let's move to the first question of the day. If God answers prayer straight from a toilet, does he actually care that your room looks like a pigsty? If God answers prayer from a toilet, we all know God can answer prayer from anywhere. There's no way we call upon God that he does not answer our prayer. So if God answers prayer from toilets, does he really care that your room is looking dirty when you're praying? Does he really care that, okay, your house is looking dirty? Does all of that, does it really matter to God? Is it that important? Where I stopped from in the introduction that, we don't expect God to come and help you to tie your shoelace. We don't expect God to come and help you to tie your edge. We don't expect God to come and help you to put on your caps. We don't expect God to come and help you to do some things, We don't expect God to come and help you to wash your clothes likewise. We don't expect God to come and tell you that, oh yeah, go and wash your clothes. We don't expect God to come and tell you that, go and wash that plate. We don't expect God, in those aspects. So even though we actually say, okay, we are letting God direct every aspect of our life, there are just some things that we feel like, oh, it's not necessary. We can handle it ourselves. We don't necessarily need God. And then they look like things that you can handle yourself. Yes, you can handle them yourself. There are things that we expect you to be able to do them, and so those things we don't really count them as things that need God guidance, and then they are necessarily not part of what makes you holy. Yes, they are not part of what makes you holy. They are necessarily part of what keeps you, not part of what keeps you in God's plan. Yes, they are not. As long as dressing modest, your dressing is not what keeps you in God's plan. Your dressing is not what tells you that, okay, if you decide to be dressing this particular way for God's plan, that's beautiful and that is good. If you decide that, okay, this is how I want to be dressing to minister, let's say you're a gospel minister, and then this is how I want to be dressing to minister, this is how I want to be dressing to minister, as long as it is modest, as long as you are dressing fine, you are covering the important parts of your body, then we don't have a problem with it. Just wear it and then go on. They are not really things that determine where you are going to get to. They are not really things that determine how far you are going to get. These things are not really the things that determine, your relationship with God, fulfilling your purpose. But then in some other ways, these things can determine fulfilling your purpose. These things can determine your relationship with God. So yes, your home looks like a pigsty, and then does it really matter to God? Does it really look like, is it really that important? You can pray in a bathroom and then God will hear you. You can pray in your room and then God will hear you. You can pray anywhere and then God will hear you. You can pray in a literal pig pen, like you hear they keep pigs physically, where they keep goats, physically, and then God will answer you. We've had people that say, okay, God speaks to them in the bedroom, because their heart is just so calm, they're not thinking about anything, and then we've had examples of those things that, okay, God can speak to you in your bathroom, he can speak to you in your toilet, he can speak to you anywhere. So the fact that your room is dirty, the fact that you're wearing dirty clothes, the fact that you're looking dirty, doesn't really matter. Does God actually care about your room when you can pray in a literal pig bed, in a literal pig where they keep pigs, and then the prayer will be answered? Does God really care? Does it really matter? Is it really, 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 really that important? Then what I'll tell you is that yes, God actually cares about your environment. He actually cares about how neat environments are. So yes, we are going to explain further as we continue today. We are going to explain the fact that God cares questions today. So the next question that we have today is, if holiness is strictly a heart condition, is it important to God? If holiness is strictly a heart condition, is being neat important to God? Like, is it really God's business? Since the spiritual that concerns we and God is actually holiness, and it's actually spiritual, and then it is not physical, and neatness is physical. This is what I would say about it, that yes, it is God's business. Just have it at the back of your mind first, that it is actually God's business. Now, when you say it is God's business, we see examples all through the scriptures where God would tell the Israelites when they are coming to meet him that, wash your clothes. The book of Exodus chapter 19 from verse 10 to 11, they were going to meet God, and then God was already telling them that, wash your clothes, do this and do that, be clean, wash your garments. Don't come to me in rags, don't come to me dirty. Just be neat. We see a huge part of the Old Testament talking about neatness. We see a huge part of the Old Testament talking about, being clean. And then, we see an example of the Israelites, even though, they extremized it out that they were not clean at heart, but, they were trying to be clean physically. We see that they made holiness to be all about, physical cleanliness. They made holiness to be all about, when you go to market, if you did not wash your hand, when you come back, you are unclean. And then they made it like, they brought it to the extreme. And then we see Jesus condemning them that if you are neat physically and then you are not neat, inwardly, that, you are only deceiving your own self. But I'll tell you now that if you are neat inwardly and then you are dirty outwardly, there's nothing to show like for it, because that is not the example that we see in the scripture. Leviticus chapter 11 to 15, we see God telling the Israelites that we see God talking about holiness. Wash this, wash that, wash your hand, wash this and that, and then all those things, it looks like they are not important. In fact, a greater part of the law talks about being neat, talks about cleanliness. A major part of the law talks about cleanliness. In fact, we see in Deuteronomy chapter 23 from verse 10 to 14, God telling them how to clean up. You are the image of God, and then the image of God should not present themselves dirty. The image of God should not present themselves unclean. The image of God should not present themselves unclean. So God cares about the space that his presence is going to rest. Yes, he cares about the space that his presence is going to rest. And then, being clean does not replace being pure. We are not talking about holiness today, we are talking about cleanliness. So being clean does not replace being pure. No, they are not the same thing. Being clean is being physically clean. You can be physically clean and be spiritually dirty. It does not replace it. It is just that your physical cleanliness should express what is on the inside. Is it everybody that is physically clean that are spiritually clean? No. But should you be spiritually clean and then physically unclean? No. It doesn't speak well of you as a believer. It doesn't speak well of you as a child of God. The way you present yourself actually matters to God, because it can actually determine whether you will fulfill his plan and purpose for your life. It can actually determine how far you go in life. That's the way you present yourself. The way you present yourself can determine how far. Bring me to the third and the last question for today. Yes, the third and last question for today, and it is that, how can messy room and a dirty clothes prevent me from fulfilling God's plan and purpose? Come on. How can messy room and then dirty clothes prevent me from fulfilling God's plan and then God's purposes? Can it ruin my purpose? What I'll say is that it absolutely can. Yes, it can ruin purpose. It can ruin a lot of things. It can hinder you from fulfilling purpose. Think about it. There was a time I was in an hospital, and then someone that was mentally disordered, they brought the person in to the emergency, and then the person was speaking in tongues, the person was prophesying, but people called it a bluff that day. Why? Because it looks like you are not looking what you are doing. Like, people just think of it as something that is coming out from a mentally disordered person, even as he was speaking in tongues, even as he was prophesying. Why? Because it doesn't look like someone that God can inhabit. Yes, we don't limit God's work, we don't limit who God can use, but it just does not look like it. The reason a madman will not stop you on the road and want to speak to you would be because, what if he bites me? Why? The madman does not look the glory of God. It does not look the part. And the same way, people will not want to listen to the minister of God that he's not looking the part. People will not want to listen to that pastor that is looking dirty, tattered, and then just anyhow. People will find it hard to come to a place where, is not neat enough to worship God. Think about it visually now. Imagine you see an angel appearing in all their glory with a stained white. In Africa, or like generally in the world, we tend to accustom white. We tend to identify white, with angel. We tend to identify white with holy. And then I'm just following that pattern now. But imagine you're not seeing an angel as we used to accustom it now. You now see an angel that is wearing white, or in a Christian movie, you see an angel that is wearing white that is stained with palm oil. Why will you say, that's not an angel speaking to him? That's someone in form of an angel speaking to him. Why? Because we don't identify uncleanliness with God. We don't identify something that is not neat with God. Naturally, we don't. So when you are not looking, when you are looking dirty, when you are acting dirty, when you are living dirty, you are not identifying with God. We don't identify something that is not neat enough to with God. We don't use black for God. Why? Because black is not for God. Oh, white means pure. And so we don't use stained white for God. You're a leader in church, you're a leader in your unit, and then people can barely stay around you because you have a dirty clothes, like your clothes is giving them a runny nose. Yes, they have a runny nose because your clothes is so dirty, and then you want them to walk in love. Why not walk in love and be neat first? And not kill them with odor, and not kill them with smelling, and not kill them with odor. The room you are praying to God, where you want God to answer you, there are flies running around, and then you want to pray and hear God in that room. Can you pray and hear God in that room? Oh yes, absolutely yes, you can. But should you do that? Like, is that a proper thing to do? Does it look right to you? Okay, this place where you want to hear God, where you want to do this, where you want to do that, is looking like this. It's looking like this. So what am I trying to say in essence is that, yes, can God hear you anywhere? Yes, God can hear you anywhere. But cleanliness is very, very important. Neatness is very, very important. Like, it's very important to God because God himself is neat. Look at without form and then it was scattered. What did God do? He arranged it with the words of his mouth. What did God do? He gave it order. Because holiness is not about being neat. You are living in a dirty space. Because it is not about being neat. You are wearing one clothes for 3 days. You are wearing one clothes for 4 days, for 5 days. Because holiness is not about being neat. And because holiness is not about being neat, you can wear the clothes you've been wearing for a week to minister again in church on Sunday. Why? Holiness is not about being neat. But then I tell you, there is neatness in holiness. Yes, there is neatness in holiness. You can't tell me you are holy and then nothing is telling you to actually do something. Like be neat. Be neat. We've had people that tell them, oh, God has been telling me to wash these clothes. That is the spirit you have in you. The spirit you have in you will not condone dirtiness. The spirit you have in you will not condone being dirty. Rather, it loves being neat. Don't confuse us. God is a God of order. Yes, he's a God of order and he wants orderliness. And the way you will be orderly is by being neat. There's a way you want to present yourself in front of them. So why not present yourself like that before God? Why not give God that respect? Show it that yes, I actually respect you. That yes, I actually honor you. That yes, this is what I'm going to do. And then you can't be in front of a king. You can't be in front of the president and then be doing some things. Why not give God to that kind of order? Why not give God to that kind that if God were physically present, how am I going to act? Am I still going to act this way I am acting? So it's not that God won't answer your prayer or God cannot answer your prayer in those places, in a dirty place, in a dirty space, in a dirty clothes. But then, why not present yourself more better? See, the reason we are wearing very good clothes to church on Sunday, why we have Sunday wears, is not just because it's not just for fun, it's not just anything, it's already a culture and then we should appear before God neat. So the reason we are wearing neat clothes to church on Sunday is not the first day of the week or anything. It's because we are appearing and then we should appear presentable. We should appear neat. We should appear looking okay. We should appear looking good. It's not because of anything. It's not because we want to show off. It's not because that's the only day to show off some native dress. It's not because that's the only day to wear some clothes. No. It is actually so that we can present ourselves appropriately before our Creator. So yes, and that is something that we should actually incorporate even in our personal lives. Your house, your room should not be that place where we come to visit and then we can't even remove our shoes. Where we can't come to visit suddenly. Where we can't come to visit anytime because it's always dirty. Where we can't come to do any special meeting. Oh, we can't do the meeting where we are meant to. Can we go to your house because your house is closed? That should not be that place where we are not to go. It should not be that place where we can't go to. Your kitchen should not be that place where we enter and then before we were able to start cooking, we have to do 2 hours cleaning. Your house should not be that place. Your room should not be that place. You should not be that dirty believer. See, cleanliness is not what makes you holy. Yes, neatness is not what makes you holy. But when you are holy, it should be clean. It should be neat. So this is to wrap it up and then permit me to read from here. You cannot separate your spiritual life from your physical life. We like to pretend that God only cares about our acts, but God cares about the whole package. Yes, holiness starts on the inside, but your physical environment shows what is truly happened in your heart. You cannot claim to have a disciplined, pure spirit if you are living in a dirty, chaotic room. Order is part of who God is. The very first thing He did in creation was to bring order to a messy world. When you clean your space, you are showing respect for the life and the body that God gives you. When you clean your space, you are showing respect for the life and the body that God gives you. You can't claim to have a disciplined Holy Spirit and then you are living a dirty life. The truth is, your environment affects your focus. It is hard to pray, hear God, or have peace when you are surrounded by trash and clutter. Cleaning up your room helps clean up your mind so you can actually hear that still small voice. People cannot see your heart, but they can see your appearance and your space. Your neatness is like a billboard for the God you serve. If we look sloppy or careless, we make the message of God look bad to the world. Being neat is not just basic respect for yourself, for others, and for God. Yes, being neat is just a basic respect for yourself, for God, and for others. Holiness is the root, and neatness is the fruit. You can't truly honor God on the inside while intentionally living like a mess on the outside. Yes, you can't really honor God, and then you are living like a mess. See, if you are a believer, then your life is actually meant to express God. We used to say this, that the goal of being saved, Ephesians chapter 4, that is that we actually grow up to the person of Christ, is that we actually grow up to become like Christ. So do you want to be presenting Jesus Christ to the world as a dirty man? When we come into your room and we see that it is dirty, do you want to be presenting Jesus as someone with a dirty room? Do you want to be presenting God as a dirty God? So yes, neatness and cleanliness, they are not what saves you. They are not what makes you holy, but they are very important in your journey. They are things because we get tired. Yes, we get tired when we see believers that you can't allow them to sit with you. Like when they sit with you, you can't practice love. A believer sits with you, they are smelling. Yes, I'm using the word smell, and then it looks like this person hasn't taken a bath in 6 days in the church. And then to show proper love, you are just there. You can't stand up. Why? Because you want to show love. You're not the only one there that is feeling like that. You're not the only one there that is smelling it. Not to make the person feel uncomfortable. Not to make the person angry. Not to make the person feel outside. Not to make the person feel like they are not among. You just sit down there. And then you have to just take it and pray that the person like stand up. And I'll pray that the person suddenly leaves. See, neatness and cleanliness, they are not what save you, like I have said earlier, and I'm saying again. But then they are very, very important. They are very, very important. They are very, very important. Morals is not what saves you. Believers should be morally upright, but we are not morally upright by our strength. And I think being clean and being neat is part of being morally upright. So the way you will dress to church on Sunday is the way you will dress anywhere. That corporate looking good. Don't just be that person that is always looking tattered to walk to anywhere. But when it comes to church, you do a lot of things just because you want to go to church. We are not doing competition in church. We are not doing competition in the church. We are only coming there dressing okay because it is the house of God and because we are coming to worship our Creator. That's the only reason. And so that way, dress to other places. Let Jesus in your life be glorified by the way you look, by the way you present yourself. Students, you are going to class. Don't dress tattered. You are going to work, you're working. Don't dress tattered. You can have little things and then manage it, utilize it, and then we're not talking about what you have now. We are simply talking about maximizing the little that you have. So be that believer that show God well, even in the presentation of themselves. Because you can have plenty, yes, and still dress tattered and still not dress well. So yes, you have plenty. Either you have plenty or you have little. Make sure you are presenting God appropriately. And I pray God will help you in Jesus' name. I pray God will help every one of us in Jesus' name. Yes, so thank you very much for listening to the end. Once again, this is Ask Questions, where we answer questions that your heart desires answers to. And like I've always said, we are open to answer your questions. We are open to answer your questions. So thank you very much for listening to the end. And then until next time, bye bye.